Nonetheless, DM, let's try and just capture for us what is at the heart of the current water challenges affecting the city of Tshwane. One, you have the city saying it's a technical problem on the supply side at Randwater. Randwater saying, no, Tshwane has exceeded its water consumption limits. Hence, we are seeing the kind of challenges we are seeing in Pretoria East.
Thank you very much, Thabo. As a Ministry of Water and Sanitation, we've intervened in the public spats between the City of Tshwane, which is a water service authority with its water service provider, the Randwater. These public spats are not in the interest of the citizens of Tshwane that requires access to water, including the benefits of that access to water, whether for environmental, social, and economical. Yesterday, the minister convened a meeting with Randwater, the City of Tshwane, and the Minister of Water and Sanitation, and directed that the public space must stop. And our focus must to ensure that water is restored in communities that have been having challenges of water over the last few days, including some of the areas where some of us are staying. And I was directed to ultimately make a follow-up with His Worship, the Mayor of Tshwane, Councillor Brink, and the MMC Fosi, the Chairperson of Randwater, Mr. Nyokolo, and the entire leadership of Randwater that were there. We've agreed that one of the biggest problems that we have is the lack of good communication and coordination between the two institutions. Because management of water from bulk to tap, it must be managed as a holistic system from end to end. And this has not been happening. Secondly, there are challenges, as we know, in Gauteng, that the water demand is actually is above the available yield. That's why last week, if you remember, Thabo, the Minister of Water working with Randwater were able to bring additional 150 megaliters per day into the water system for Gauteng, for Mpumalanga, Northwest, and some parts of Free State. And in the main, one of the problems when we engaged with this municipality and Randwater yesterday, we agreed that firstly, there are norms and standards when it comes to management of water in the system from the command reservoirs. Some of the problems we have, the command reservoirs which are for storage of water in some of these areas, the norm, it must be between 60 and 70-something percentage. And sometimes when water is allowed to below that particular number, it will have an impact in terms of the pressure, especially in the high-lying areas. And we agreed that the municipality and Randwater, they must share the information in their telemetry system so that they don't have a problem where they go beyond the levels where the reservoirs, whether we are using gravitational force, whether we are pumping, certain areas will have no water. Secondly, there's an issue of load shedding and how they manage their water balance from time to time and the issues of the water usage in cooperation with the water users in the entire City of Tshwane, it must be corrected. There are issues that indeed now were at a summer season. Randwater had convened a meeting of all municipalities in Gauteng to agree on a water management plan on how to manage during El Nino, but at the very same time, the consumer education and the responsibilities of municipalities. Right. That meeting between the City of Tshwane and Randwater never took place so that they can be able to agree about the numbers, whether to increase or to reduce the issues of the availability of water. Right. That's what they've been fighting for in the main. Right. But now we've agreed that they are going to collaborate, they are going to work together. Then there is a need to implement water conservation and demand management from the systems management point of view, ensuring that there are no leakages in the system. When there are leaks, those leaks they are being managed. But also the behavior of citizens of Tshwane and elsewhere, they must be able to coordinate that at this particular point that we know that the usage is beyond the world average of 175, and the South African average is 275, and in Gauteng we're running at 300 liters per capita per day by users of our people. Those are some of the things that we have agreed that they must focus on. But going forward in a week or two, we are going to meet with all municipalities in Gauteng. They must now respond whether their infrastructure is so adequate in such a way that the additional water that is being given into the system, they will be able to use that water, they will be able to store it, they will be able to give people proper billings, and that water is not going to go to the ground on the basis of water leaks or any illegal connections.
One would be very confused here and say we come from a summer season where we saw what we classify as an abundance of rain in the Gauteng province. Yet you're saying the overarching challenge here is that there is an acute water shortage. How do the two align? What would be the context of that historical acute water shortage?
We have to understand that we have been very fortunate that even during the winter season, very good rainfall that we have received, above the normal rainfall that we normally receive as a country. But it doesn't change, Thabo, from the fact that we remain a water-scarce country. There will be certain parts of the country where it rains, the other parts of the country is normally dry. The fact of the matter that water is coming into the dams, it does not necessarily mean that that water becomes available. Because there must be an investment in bulk infrastructure. The bulk infrastructure like your dams, your weirs, your water treatment plants, including the reservoirs that will be able to store this water, including the bulk pipelines of thousands of kilometers, so that you can be able to do that. As a country, in as much as we have done a lot of investment, we must appreciate that there is still a backlog when it comes to infrastructure, bulk infrastructure development. That's why we welcome the issue of in Vlakfontein here at Lane. Early this year, around March, additional 210 megaliters of water, which is about 210 million liters of water that could be held by that reservoir, that could be used by certain parts of Mpumalanga, Gauteng, and then Free State and Northwest. The one that we did last week, the shortfall demand in Gauteng was running at about 300 megaliters. Therefore, last week on Thursday, we added another 150, but it does not necessarily mean that we are able to meet the demand. The worst part is that a number of these municipalities, their pipelines are very old. They lose between 30 to 45% of that water that was supposed to be given to our people. And in certain instances, that's why it doesn't arrive in communities. Where I stay in Pretoria as an example, one of the things that municipalities must do is to increase reservoirs as balancing reservoirs, because if there is a load shedding and you can't keep water in your storage system for a period of about 48 hours, people are going to run out of water. They'll be agitated like these days.
That's the next question that I wanted to raise in terms of the action plan. What's the technical team reporting back on that issue of capacity? Because the mayor would say to us, well, the reason why we are unable to fill the reservoir to 60-70% capacity is because we don't have electricity long enough to be able to do that.
We have met with Minister Mkhunu with all these municipalities. We agreed that one of the biggest investments must happen in bulk. And that investment in bulk will look from A to Z of the water system, from the dams. That's why we're bringing water from Polykhali Dam through Lesotho so that the valve system can't run out of water. Additional treatment capabilities. In other words, you must treat more of this water because it's available. That's why in Zekerbosch, that water treatment plant, an additional 150 was brought on board. By the end of this year, another 150 megaliters is going to be brought on board. But all the cities, whether in Tshwane, whether in Fuleni, they must increase their storage capacity. Because if they don't have additional storage capacity, they will have no lag time in instances of load shedding, and people will be running out of water. But at the very same time, to deal with load shedding issues, there's been discussion to exempt some of these bigger systems in dealing with some of those issues. But the biggest problem we face, out of every 100 megaliters of water that these municipalities they use, Thabo, they are losing more than 45 megaliters.
Yeah.
In other words, we only have about 55 megaliters, in certain instances about 40 megaliters that must be utilized by citizens, while the demand is very high. At the same time, these municipalities, if they don't fix the leaks and manage their infrastructure properly, it's a revenue that is being lost.
Yeah.
And some of them, that's why they owe ESCOM, they owe these water boards. And we've taken a decision to support them, that we are going to replace infrastructure for them, place these water boards at their disposal, those that don't have the capacity and the balance sheet,
yes,
so that from end to end, from the management of the resource and the revenue, we are able to manage the two so that we can guarantee the availability of water to all citizens for all the uses that the citizens they want to do.
Yeah.
In Tshwane,
yes,
in Tshwane, there is one point I must indicate. There is also a management question. You know how to manage the water system.
Yes.
You need people who are highly skilled, that they know how to manage the pressure, monitor the telemetry, able to interact with citizens, so that that water balance, when it fluctuates at particular intervals,
yeah,
we are able to make the issues of the ability to respond, whether in terms of pressure management, increase it, whether you lower it, and all these other issues, even when you are able to see that there are leaks, and you are able to respond within the shortest space of time, including vandalism, because in Tshwane and other areas, there are people who are interfering with power generation, others are interfering with these pipelines, and you find that some of them is because someone has decided to actually steal a pipe, and water is no longer coming out.
In fact, while you're there, if I'm not mistaken, there was an announcement, if not earlier this year, maybe it was late last year, that there would have been some kind of a partnership that the City of Tshwane would have forged with an investment in the billions around some technology to be used on leak detection. How is that fitting into the broader plan?
It is part of the strategy that we've discussed with them, that in terms of water conservation and demand management, one of the biggest issues this time around, when you have pipes of thousands of kilometers underground, you will not be able to see. Therefore, to use artificial intelligence and remote sensing, the issues of technology, you will be able to see that at this particular point, the pressure is dipping. It might dip because there might be the caving of the roads, whether there is any intrusion of foreign objects like trees, because it takes time for you to be in a position to see that there is a leak until the water comes out, is one of that particular component. The other component in water conservation and demand management, it says that old infrastructure and the pipes that have collapsed, they don't need to be replenished, they need to be replaced. Because a collapsed pipe, depending on the technology that is used, is not going to be adding any particular value. Therefore, investment in the replacing of old networks is going to be the most important aspect. Then there's an issue of metering or calibration. You must be able to meter from source until to the tap, so that you know how much water have you abstracted in terms of the license, and every point in terms of the calibration from the treatment plant into the reservoir, the distribution system, until it arrives in people's homes, and you give the best, a correct bill to people, because one of the problems is the billing system around the country, because there is no proper management.
Right.
And then the last component, Thabo, is the issue of consumer education.
Yeah, communication.
Citizens must be involved.
Yeah.
And they must change behavior. If they don't, you hit them with the bylaws, including with the financial implication, so that they can't proceed and behave that water is available to infinito.
Right. So what is the technical team going to do now? I see they're saying there will be weekly meetings, at least weekly report backs. How are we going to ensure there's at least a better communication and transparency around this issue?
One of the things that we have said is that the technical teams are going to be led at the highest level, at the level of the general manager in City of Tshwane and the chief operations officer on the other side of rainwater. Then they will be reporting both to the CEO and the city manager, including the director general. If there are problems, the minister has given me the responsibility to convene the mayor and the chairperson of the board, be able to do this. But in our meetings that we'll have with them, we'll demand a management plan of the entire system. Because if that system is not managed, in a coordinated way, they will blame each other.
Right.
Number two, they are going to ensure that they have an access on the entire system from rainwater side and from the side of the City of Tshwane, so that they will be able to monitor the telemetry.
I see.
And then also they will be having teams at an operational level that will be able to monitor the supply of water, both in the system and the one that is being provided through the cutting system. And that information must be made available to councillors, including in the website of the City of Tshwane. And in future, we are encouraging them to issue joint statements in as much as they are separate organizations, rather than pointing fingers at each other.
Completely out of time. Deputy Minister, I appreciate you. Thank you very much for coming on this evening.
Thank you very much, sir.
Deputy Minister, Water and Sanitation at Mahlobo.